Long see no time. I had to take a break from watching seasons after watching like 5 straight. You kind of need to. I burned myself out for a little bit, but I'm good. I'm good. So, I think it's pretty obvious. I told you what we were covering this time, so we're going to do it. You know what? I might start using the Legacy more for whenever I get my hands on that. If you don't know what that is, that's basically the. That's the Super Mega Force version of the Mobile. Still looking for it. It's only been out for a couple days though, but I'll get it sooner or later. Okay. So, come here. I'm starting from the beginning. Let's do this right from the start. So, there are a few seasons of Sentai that were going to be adapted into Power Rangers initially. Sun Vulcan was the first season, and it got turned down. Bioman got turned down. Then Jetman got approved. And it was going to go through until Saban wanted to take advantage of the Jurassic Park craze that was really big at the time. And then they looked at the next season and was like, ooh, dinosaurs. So we got Zoo Ranger instead. And we adapted into our very first Power Rangers. And probably, easily the most iconic Power Rangers group. And to an extent, I would consider this more famous than some Sentai teams because what Mighty Morphin Season 1 did to the world of Tokusatsu is probably something that nothing else is ever gonna replicate. Now, granted, Go Ranger had a bigger effect because it was the first Sentai, and without Sentai, this wouldn't exist. But this opened up the doors of Tokusatsu to the entire world. So, even to you Sentai purists out there, admit it, how many of you would be Sentai purists if it wasn't for this? Be honest, okay? This is where most of us got our Tokusatsu roots. Even though Mighty Morphin Season 1 hasn't particularly aged too well, granted it being a first attempt, and especially if you've seen Zoo Ranger like I have, and some of the things that they do really stick out. Like, there are just some cuts and edits and stuff that really don't make any sense in terms of the Sentai footage. But the first attempt mark really shows, especially watching it all these years later. But it's not all that bad because when they actually do decide to write story, Mighty Morphin Season 1's actually held up pretty solid, I have to say. And then once you get near the end of Season 1, that's when things start to get really cool. If you've seen Zoo Rangers, then it'll be even more cool. Because of the footage that was used. So, there were two versions of Day at the Dumpster, which, if you don't know what Day at the Dumpster is and why you're watching this, and the first episode of Mighty Morphin, there was the one we got, and then there was this other one. I think the disc's rattling around here. No, that's just how it is. There was another one that wasn't used, and it was pretty violent-ish, that's a word now. It was more violent. Like, they had like a darker filter over it, and it was a lot more violent. Like, it showed them beating a Bulk and Skull in a bowling alley or something. It was really, really weird how it started. And Zordon wasn't called Zordon. I forgot what his name was. And they had different people cast in different positions. Like, Yellow Ranger wasn't Trudy Tang. It was somebody else. And I think Walter Jones wasn't there either. But it was really bad. Like, if you actually go back and watch it, it is I mean, it's got a darker tone to it, but at the same time, it was just, there's just something about it that stunk. And I think the version we got was actually better. It was, so basically what happens, they go to the moon, even though in Zoo Ranger it's a planet orbiting like the solar system or something. And it has a canister on, and these astronauts go unleash it. Rita and her group comes out, basically the same way Zoo Ranger started. So if you've seen one, you've seen the other, and how Rita or Bandora got released. And then we get introduced to Zordon, who is a wizard that locked Rita away years and years ago, but at the same time, she locked him in like some weird interdimensional space or something. So he's basically communicating to everybody through a hole in the I don't know. They never really explain it all that well. And he's got his robot Alpha, which everybody should know Alpha at this point in his I stuff. Alpha's lovable though. Tensu is not. I mean, I don't have anything against Tensu, but he doesn't have the charm that Alpha did. So they're like, "Oh, just get me teenagers, because that's how we roll here." So they get brought in after some kind of earthquake hits Angel Grove. Jason, Trini, Billy, Zach, and Kimberly get brought to the command center. And they get told, well, there's a witch, Rita, got loose, and her band of monsters. Here's power coins, use them to become Power Rangers. They don't buy it, because it seems a bit weird, even though a giant head in the tube and a robot walking around in a really high-tech looking center isn't enough to prove somebody. So they don't buy it, they walk out, and then they get attacked by putties. Once again, these should be obvious what putties are. And then they buy into it, turn into the Power Rangers, and that's basically Day at the Dumpster. I mean, it's a pretty simple, straightforward introduction. Now, as Mighty Morphin Season 1 goes, it's basically a Monster of the Week show. This is something that, when I talked about the mark of first attempt was all over Season 1, this is what I'm talking about. They didn't really know how to implement an original story using footage that was already shot on a consistent basis. So they kind of didn't, for the most part. But like I said, the parts that they did right were actually not too bad. So go take episode 2 through episode 16, nothing happens. Which is another reason why it took me so long to get to this review, is because I was trying to watch every episode, and then I got to about episode 10 over here, and I just got really bored with it, because nothing was happening at all, anywhere. Because I told myself I was going to watch every episode. And then I said, screw it. My sanity is not going to hold up if I keep doing this. I want something to keep my attention going. So I just decided to skip right to episode 17, which is when we get introduced to this figure art is awesome, by the way. If you haven't picked it up, the Dragon Ranger. Well, actually, this is the Mighty Morphin Green Ranger release. If you haven't picked this thing up yet, get it. It is awesome. And plus, I've already established this is my favorite individual Ranger costume of all time, so I had to jump on it ASAP. It's a great figure, though. I'm not going to lie. So, basically what happens here is that Rita reveals that she has a Green Ranger coin. Wants to give it to somebody who's worthy. Jason ends up fighting this new guy called Tommy in a martial arts tournament at the juice bar. And they end in a tie, Rita's like, oh, he went toe-to-toe with the Power Ranger. Let me take him. So she basically mind controlled him, gave him the coin, gave him the Sword of Darkness, or Hellfried. That was what it was called in Zoo Ranger. And told him to go into the command center and rip it up and knock Zordon out of the way. So he does that. Jason basically gets kidnapped by Goldar, and they have to figure out who the Green Ranger is. That's basically what happens. I mean, there's not really much to it. I mean, there's this instance where they realize that the Dino Megazord is like solar powered, so she conducts a spell to make an eclipse come by, and then she grows Goldar and Green Ranger up, and they end up supposedly destroying the Dino Megazord. But Zordon and Alpha manage to repair, and they come back up. And then Tommy gets his Dragon Dagger, calls upon the Dragon Zord, goes on a rampage. They end up knocking out Dragon Zord. Jason defeats Tommy, destroys the Sword of Darkness, and Tommy joins the team. Not as dramatic as the Dragon Ranger introduction arc in Zoo Ranger, but I did find it a bit better written. I might save this for something I'm going to do later. I'm not going to go in depth in this yet, but whenever I get around to my first installment of Power Rangers versus Super Sentai, when I'm basically just going to compare and contrast them and think and speak which one I think was more enjoyable or better or whatever, or who won or whatever, something fun I want to do. That's when I'll get into the whole who handled what story better and whatnot. I mean, it was enjoyable. And a 5-parter and a kid show in the 90s, that's saying something. We get introduced to Titanus a little bit later. King Brachion, if you want a Sentai counterpart name. Titanus really isn't that important in Power Rangers. Then there's this 2-parter called Island of Illusion, where basically they get transported to like this weird world where they get put into hallucinations of their fears, and if they succumb to it, then they fade from existence. They managed to get out of that and win. Then, because of the Dragon Ranger footage running short, we had to find a way to write Tommy out. So to do this, instead of killing him like they did in Zoo Ranger, take the candle idea that Zoo Ranger had and put a twist on it. By this, making it that Rita had a candle that the Dragon Ranger or the Green Ranger coin was tied to. Make it burn out, and Rita would get the power back. That's actually not that bad of an idea, but why did it take her this long to do that? I mean, when she lost the Green Ranger, it was episode 21, and she decided to do this in episode 34. You took a while to decide to do this. But then again, Rita wasn't necessarily the smartest villain in the world. She was really simple-minded. She kind of stayed that way too in space. Especially in space, she didn't do anything except whine and complain about Divatox. But I'll get to Divatox sooner or later, sadly. So basically, they knew about this. Tommy's power started to drain. Jason decided to go after the candle, while Tommy handles a monster by himself with the Dragon Zord. Jason can't get to the candle in time before it runs out because they have to go back and save Tommy before he gets killed. I mean, what's the point of saving the candle if he ends up dying in the process? So the candle fades. But Zordon has an idea saying that Rita can't recapture the power if it's transferred to another Ranger. So he gives the coin to Jason, and then that's how he gets the shield instead of like Bry giving Geki the whatever. So Rita doesn't get the power. Ha. Ha 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 ha. Way to go. Hold on a second. That's next season. I'm getting something confused with the next season. So we've come to the end of the Zoo Ranger footage right here with two-parter Doomsday. I'm going to assume this was supposed to be the end of season 1. Basically, Goldar has a secret mech that they try to unlock, a Megazord of his own. They awaken it, and it basically blows Dino Megazord out of the water. So they have to just keep going because Dino Megazord and a Dragonzord keep getting whittled down because of I don't remember what Great Satan's name was in Mighty Morphin. That blue head thing. Not really do a good job of making the names of the villains and individual goons and Power Rangers obvious. But they end up destroying Goldar and all this, destroying the mech and everything. Zordon asked them if they wanted to stay Rangers or not. And they're like, okay, yay. So they stay. So that's the end of the Zoo Ranger footage. What now? Well, Saban called Toei and was like, hey, Mighty Morphin was a success. Oh, really? Well, congratulations. What am I doing? Can we have original footage for the season? You mean like film footage for you? Yep. Sure. I should put a little asterisk down here that says I should put a little asterisk down here that says actual event. Because this was odd. This is how phones worked back in the 1990s. So basically episode 41 through 60, and then a little bit into the beginning of season 2, we have what was known as the Zoo 2 footage, which is basically footage that was filmed in a Zoo Ranger manner, but was never used in Zoo Ranger. It was made specifically for Mighty Morphin. Things that made this obvious. 1, Green Ranger was back. 2, Yellow Ranger was feminine mold. 3, instead, whenever they were talking to outer body, they actually talked into their wrists. And there was more technological things brought in because of Billy being a genius and all that. So it looked like Zoo Ranger footage. With, you know how the old 90s Sentais kind of had like that weird grainy looking filter over them? And then you compare it to Mighty Morphin original footage and it's a lot more clear. Well, it had that Sentai filter over it, but it had Mighty Morphin quirks to it. Like I said, Green Ranger actually being there and fighting, which is something you never saw him do in Zoo Ranger. Yellow Ranger was female, and they talked into their wrist, had the technology, brought in all that stuff. And it was really, really fun to watch. Original monsters that were made just for the footage, original Megazord scenes, original Ranger scenes. All that stuff was original. And the stories for these last 20 or so episodes were actually pretty well written individual episodes, except for the two-parter where Tommy comes back. And it was really, really good stuff, especially seeing how I've seen Zoo Ranger. So seeing this original footage was really awesome, because they did some really cool things that the Zoo Ranger didn't have, like Black Ranger with the the Dragon Shield, and they had this one where they had to fight football villains, and that one was really funny. And just the fact that you got to see the Green Ranger suit actually fight somebody was cool, because Dragon Ranger, or Bry, never fought any monsters. In Zoo Ranger, the only person he ever fought in hand-to-hand combat was basically Tyranno Ranger. So actually seeing that suit fight something was really cool in its own right, because I love seeing that suit in motion. But back to that two-part I was telling you about, Return of an Old Friend. Basically, Rita kidnaps the parents and everybody in Angel Grove in return for their power coins. So they decide to go for it. Give them the power coins. Okay, give us our parents back. No, Red Ranger. That's how Goldvar talks. And then they don't have their power coins, don't have their parents. What do? Oh, well, remember that Tommy dude? Yeah, here he is. But my powers don't work. I'm just gonna recharge it with my own face, said Zordon. That's basically what he did, though. He transferred some of his own power into the coin to make it work. So basically, Tommy's back, goes to get the coins back, going up against Goldar and a whole bunch of putties, managed to get them back, and they managed to keep him there, but his power is slowly dying off. So he's kind of getting weaker as it goes. And there's like this recurring theme that carries on into the next season, which it's even better in the beginning half of season 2, because I'm about halfway through season 2 right now. And it's like a side story that's going on the whole time. His powers are steadily fading away as time goes on. It kind of has the same feeling as the green candle thing in Zoo Ranger, where every time he leaves the timeless room, his life fades. Every time he morphs into the Green Ranger, his power fades. And it really did have that Dragon Ranger feel to it, and I like that, because you know how much I love the Dragon Ranger story arc in Zoo Ranger. But the season 1 was odd in the fact that it never had a real finale. It kind of ended on a random episode where Zach got to wear the dragon shield. It was cool seeing the Black Ranger wear the shield, but there wasn't really a finale to season 1, and I don't think season 2 had a real finale either. See, they didn't really know how to close anything out. The only season that had a real finale was season 3, and that's because they had to jump to Zeo next. But, I mean, you can't really hate Mighty Morphin season 1. I mean, I know a lot of people, and my favorite toy reviewer, Shinka Shinobi, has brought this up. And yeah, Mighty Morphin has been run down the toilet a little bit. It's been overdone. Whenever someone says Power Rangers, what's the first thing that comes to mind? I mean, if you're not big into the Power Rangers, community or whatever, then you're immediately going to think, oh, Mighty Morphin was the best thing ever, and all the other seasons stink, even though Mighty Morphin kind of isn't in space, or SPD, or Time Force, or a lot of other seasons for that matter. But it's held up fairly well. I wouldn't say it's the best thing ever. I would put it ahead of Megaforce, only because the characters are a bit more likable. Now, my thoughts on Megaforce will be up. Probably Saturday night, Sunday night, or something, because the last episode of Megaforce airs Saturday afternoon, and I'm actually kind of excited. So my thoughts on Megaforce will be up then. But, I mean, I don't really have anything against Megaforce. I got a lot of friends that think Megaforce is worse than Overdrive. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I know you're watching, Ronald. Don't give me that look. I can just imagine you giving me this glare while you're watching this. But, I mean, it's held up fairly well. I've said this before, and I don't know if I'm still going to agree with myself when I say this, but Superhero and Samurai Cyber Squad, you know, the Gridman adaptation that a lot of people seem to hate. I kind of thought it aged better than Mighty Morphin Season 1 did, but after rewatching it, in for the most part, I guess, everything that was important about the season, I don't know if I agree with that statement anymore. I mean, it's lovable, it's got a charm to it, and it's always cool going back and watching how it started. But just because it's the first doesn't necessarily mean it's the best. This doesn't have the Digimon syndrome here. I thought Adventure was the best, and I still do. But Mighty Morphin Season 1, especially Season 1, is not the best. Now, I'm currently halfway through Season 2, and I already think it's better. Story-wise, technical-wise, there's some hiccups. Season 2 has, like, a good amount of hiccups, and I'll get to that in my next, when I get to Mighty Morphin Season 2, probably sometime this week. And Season 3 is the one season I remember the least about, other than I hated those ninja costumes. I still don't like them. And we got the aliens. Or for you people out there that want to be that guy, the Kaku Rangers. But it's watchable still. That's one good thing. But I mean, if you're new to the Power Rangers thing, or if you want to go back and watch, because I mean it's the 20th anniversary. Super Mega Force is basically going to be the full-out anniversary season. Next year, I think they said it was going to start in March or something is when Super Mega Force was going to start, which is way too far off from me. Which is good. It gives me more time to watch as many Power Rangers seasons as I can before it starts. But give at least this season a rewatch. It's not as good as some things. I wouldn't say it's worse than Zoo Ranger. And I wouldn't say Zoo Ranger is better, but at the same time I wouldn't say this is better than Zoo Ranger. And like I said, I'll get to that late in another video. It has its quirks. It does have some signs of aging. It does have some of that first attempt ewiness on it. But it's got that charm. You know, that stuff in the 90s that we know it stunk, but it had that nice little lovable charm to it that you can't really hate. Mighty Morphin Season 1 kind of falls under that category. But as a Toku season, compared to some Sentai seasons, some of the later Power Ranger seasons like Time Force, SPD, In Space, RPM, just because of how much story it was put into that season, it can be a bit flat, especially with the amount of episodes that are actually story related. 60 episodes for a season that has, let me count real quick, how many story episodes does it have? 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15 episodes out of 60 are story. I think Mighty Morphin may have been better with the Megaforce approach of just 20 episodes, because it's basically the same thing. I mean, there are a couple filler episodes or whatever, stupid episodes in Megaforce, but for the most part, it's a continuous story. I mean, I'll grant that the continuous story in Mighty Morphin is better written, because there's more overlapping themes other than just one thing with Robo Knight trying to become a human. But if you can endure it, then just go watch it. If not, then just watch the 15 episodes that are story related. It's obvious to tell which ones are story related because they're all multi-parters. So. But it was a blast. I mean, this is the first time I've actually had a chance to really sit down and rewatch Mighty Morphin Season 1. And it brought a smile to my face. Especially when it came to the soundtrack. I don't need to say anything about the theme song. Everybody said everything they can about the theme song for Mighty Morphin. It's better than most Sentai themes. It's better than just about every Power Rangers theme. I do think Spaces is a might be a bit better, but that just might be because of my love for In Space. But I mean, when it comes into pop culture, this is considered one of the best theme songs of all time, and I don't blame them. Now, granted, I kind of think the movie version is a bit better, but we don't talk about the Mighty Morphin movie because that movie is terrible. Every second of it is horrible. No, I won't be reviewing it because I don't want to waste my time watching that crap. But all in all, I'm glad I'm doing this, mostly because I get to go back and rewatch things like this. So, I'm not going to give my thoughts on it yet. I kind of did anyway, but Mighty Morphin Season 2 will be next. Then Season 3, and the Aliens, I'll be reviewing the Alien thing with Season 3, because it's considered a part of Season 3. Then at the end of that, I'll do a whole Mighty Morphin as a whole thoughts on how has the whole Mighty Morphin thing aged and whatnot. So, next time I see you for a review, it'll probably be Megaforce. Nah, I'll get Season 2 done before then. So, White Ranger Tiger Power. Just get used to those words because Season 2 kind of spams them a little bit.